Think about what Krishna says in this verse. He says, at the end, being engaged in my transcendental service, he is sure to attain me, the highest and most perfect goal. One thing you can say about Krishna, he's not shy. He's not like, he's not like, oh, you didn't have to say that about me. Really, that's too much. You're glorifying me too much. No, he says it about it, and he says it about himself, because he's God, and he can say whatever Krishna says is perfect. If he's and it's a fact. He's just stating the obvious fact. Being engaged in my transcendental service, he is sure to attain me, the highest and most perfect goal. There is no goal. Everybody has some goal in life. Mostly it's just material sense gratification. but Prabhupada says here that all the devotees, even if they uh, uh, all are magnanimous, because anyone who comes to the Lord advance in devotional service. And Krishna is another statement in the Chaitanya Charitamrita by Krishna, and he says, I can't quote the exact verse, but this is definitely the idea of the two or three verses that are there. Krishna says, this person is approaching me for material benediction, and he's a fool because he's approaching me for that. And Krishna said, but I'm not a fool. And so he says, even if I do give it to him, sometimes you know where you know where it is in the Chaitanya Charita, if you can. But he says, if I fulfill their material desires, I do it in such a way that they won't ask for it again. Like, I don't know, does everyone here know that story of in the 12th canto of the Bhagavatam where Markandeya Rishi is sitting on the bank of the river meditating? I read that only, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago for the first time. I never really heard it before, but he was meditating, and Krishna's incarnation of Narayan Rishi, they came to him, and he was overwhelmed, and they asked him, is there any desire that you have? And he said, I'd like to see the workings of your material energy. And and then he went through that whole thing of drowning in the ocean for thousands of years and suffering like anything, and so such a long period of time, and just drowning, no land anywhere, no other living entities anywhere, just in the ocean, just drowning. And if you've ever been in the ocean, and I mean, I don't like going in the ocean very much, but it's very dangerous. It can be very dangerous. Any place is dangerous, but sometimes you're very near to shore, even very near shore, only like 50 feet out in the water, and it's not deep water. You can stand up in it, but then a wave comes in. I had this experience, and a wave comes in, and it goes over you, and you just go underwater, and the wave is just like tossing you around underwater, and you can't do anything. You can't get out of it. Your legs and arms are going all over the place, and you're helpless, and you're just being thrown around. So I did that. I had that. That was only for like 5 seconds or 10 seconds, but Markandeya Rishi was in that state for like, I don't know what it says, like thousands or millions of years. And then just suffering like anything, and then all of a sudden he saw a little island with a banyan tree on it, the banyan tree on it, and he saw a little baby on the banana leaf, and it was Krishna. And then the next thing he knew, he everything was gone, all the water was gone, and he was just back on the shore of the river meditating again. And he realized what happened. That he asked for it. He asked for Krishna to show him how his material energy worked, and they just Narayana and Rishi. They didn't say anything. They just turned and walked away. And he's like, well, I don't know. I guess nothing's going to happen. And then, and then the next thing he knows, he's raining like crazy and drowning. Anyway, so Krishna, he had a desire, and Krishna fulfilled his desire. But I bet he never asked for that again. Anyways, but Prabhupada says here, out of affection, they ask the Lord for some material benefit, and when they get it, they become so satisfied that they also advance in devotional service. So he says it a little different here. They become so satisfied. I mean, you could say he was satisfied that, yeah, I saw it. I'm satisfied. But yeah, so Krishna may fulfill. A lot of times he doesn't fulfill our material desires because he knows they're bad for us. Like a little kid asks his parents for all kinds of candy or wants to do something that the parents know is not good for the child. So they don't always give him what he wants. But a lot of times if they see the child really wants something, they'll give it to him. Even though they know, if he eats too much cake or candy or something, or something that he really wants, he may eat too much, and then he'll have a stomach ache, and then he'll learn from that. And so anyway, Krishna knows he doesn't always fulfill our material desires, and a lot of times, most of the time, I would say Krishna doesn't fulfill our material desires, but he always gives the devotees what they need to live a decent, happy life. That's my experience in the United States for all these years, is that devotees, Krishna, they get married, they have kids, and they wonder, like me, when I got married, I had been in the leading up to when I moved into the temple, I was 23 years old, and I had jobs here and there, nothing serious, nothing long lasting or anything. One time I worked in a factory for 9 months. That was the longest job I ever had. I never had any serious job. And and when I moved, and I never had to make money. My parents were like really generous. Actually, they were. I figured out later that they were kind of too generous. They made it really too easy for me, and it would have been better if they had been a little tougher. But they were so generous. I never really had to work, and then I moved in the temple, and I was there for 14 years as a brahmachari, just all day long, just sweeping and mopping and washing pots and distributing books and going on Harinam and taking care of guests and just doing morning program and japa and just regular full-time temple devotee. Like we pretty much all were back then. And I never had to make money. The temple took care of everything. And then I got married when I was 37, and then I had to start. I realized that I had to make money, and I didn't really think much about it before. when I was just in the process of getting married. But after I was married, it kind of hit me that I kind of have to make money now. And but I didn't have any college education. I didn't have any skills except for washing pots and sweeping the floor. That's not a very marketable skill if you want to make, you know. But anyway, so I had to start making money, and we had had a flower business in the temple for quite a few years. One devotee started a flower business, and he hired not only and he hired the devotees living in the temple to work in his business, and he paid the devotees $8 an hour. And if you, he also gave half of his profits to the temple. And he's a great devotee. He's still great. So he's been living in Ukraine for the last 20 years or so, and he's married, and he lives in the Kiev temple or across the street. He's a really good devotee, the biggest book distributor that Boston ever had too, before he left the temple and started this business. And what? Ladvamsi. Ladvamsi.
That's the initiative name?
Yeah.
How do you spell it?
Ladvamsi. It's a type one of Krishna's flutes. And Ladvamsi is a disciple of Prabhupada, and he's really nice devotee, super nice. So he gave he made a lot of money at the business, and he gave half of his profits, half to the temple every week. And he hired the devotees to work in his business too. And he had several of us working in the business for like half day, usually half day, 5 or 6 days a week. And he paid the devotees $8 an hour, which was a decent hourly wage in the United States back then. It's not so good now in the United States, but it was pretty good back then. And if you were a brahmachari, all of the $8 went to the temple. And if you were married, you could keep $4 an hour for yourself, and $4 went directly to the temple. So anyway, so I worked in that business for the temple for 8 years, mostly as a brahmachari, but then for a while as a grihasta. And then we moved to Gita Nagari, and after a couple of years, and that's when it really hit me that I had to start making money. And so I was thinking, what do I do? I don't know anything. I don't have any skills, no education. And so I said, well, I know how to work with flowers and sell flowers on the street. There's a lot to know. Every business has a lot to know, no matter how simple it is. So I knew all how to do that. So I said, I went to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, about an hour drive from the temple. I bought some flowers at the wholesale market, and I went out on the street and set up a little stand there, and I sold flowers that day, and I made $50 profit the first day. And I was like, hey, I made $50 today. I'm going to come again tomorrow. And I did. And I kept going back every day for 20 years. 20 years on that street corner in winter, spring, summer, and fall. And I was out there from like 9 or 10 in the morning till 6 o'clock at night, driving an hour and a half each way to go to work. But I was making enough money to take care of the family comfortably. And anyway, I'm just using that as an example in my own case, that I didn't know what to do, but Krishna knew what to do. I never in my life thought I'd end up being a flower man for 8 years in the business and then 20 years on my own. Never conceived that when I was growing up. And but Krishna showed me how to do it, and he gave me the intelligence how to do it and the ability to face the elements and deal with crazy people all day long, every day, and it was pretty wild. But anyways, I've seen that over and over again in the every case I can think of, the devotees, even if they're relatively, many devotees are pretty together materially, and they know how to do things, and they have skills, and they know how to get it together and make money if they're when they're married. But there's a lot of devotees like me who didn't know how to do anything, and but Krishna showed us, and we lived, and we were okay, and families had kids and houses or apartments, and had have cars and live a comfortable life. It's not very hard to live a comfortable life in the United States. It's pretty easy, and but still, it's a lot of work, of course. And but anyway, my point is, and this is what I tell young devotees or devotees in general, is when Krishna says he'll take care of you, you should believe it. It's a fact. Krishna does carry what we lack and preserve what we have. There's that famous story about the Brahmin who said, "Well, I don't think Krishna really does it himself," so he crossed it out, and then yeah, you know the whole story. And so it's a literal, absolute fact that Krishna carries what we lack and preserves what we have. And of course, he doesn't always. Like the devotees get sick, they have cancer or some other bad disease. So you could say, well, he's not carrying what they lack. They lack good health. So how is he carrying what they lack to them? But yeah, but Krishna. Anyway, it's the nature of the material world, the material body, birth, death, disease, and old age. But anyway, Krishna doesn't always give every devotee an easy life, or generally he does. He makes it, but he doesn't always do that, and that's also Krishna's independence to treat each devotee in his own omniscient, perfect way, and whatever he does for the devotee is what Krishna knows is best for each devotee. And those devotees who struggle a lot in their material life, and but they stay faithful to Krishna, and they become very purified and very, very, very surrendered, and so Krishna anyway. Krishna generally takes care of us in the way that we think is pretty good, but not always. But he's always doing what he knows to be best for us. He treats each one of us as an individual case. Like parents have several children, and they treat each child according to what they know that particular child needs for his growth and development. And they don't treat each child exactly the same way, but they treat each child with love, and they take care of them, but not in the same way. Anyway, but the devotee in full knowledge is considered to be very dear to the Lord, because his only purpose is to serve the Supreme Lord with love and devotion. Such a devotee cannot live a second without contacting or serving the Supreme Lord. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is very fond of his devotee and cannot be separated from him. One point I meant to make this morning, I frequently talk about, is devotees sometimes they wonder what my determination isn't as strong as it should be. My conviction or my faith isn't as strong as it should be. What'll happen to me? What if I can't What if I have all kinds of trouble? What'll happen to me? And yeah, and so what I've seen over the years is that even if a devotee goes away, and it happens, it definitely happens in the United States that devotees are faithfully serving for a period of time, and some devotees, not a big percentage, but some devotees, they go away and they want to live completely independently, but Krishna doesn't let anybody go. Once Krishna has a hold of you in this life, he, he's very persistent. He may let you go do what you want to do, but he doesn't forget. Certainly doesn't forget the devotees, and he certainly doesn't let them forget him. They're even in that condition. They're always thinking, "Oh, but I should be chanting Hare Krishna. I should be going to the temple. I'm not, and I don't intend to." Right now, I'm doing this, I'm doing that for my sense gratification. I'm not going to the temple. I'm not going to chant my rounds, but but uh, but Krishna doesn't. They don't forget Krishna. They can't forget Krishna. Krishna doesn't let them forget him, and he doesn't forget the devotee. He says in this verse, a famous verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the devotees are always in my heart, and I am always in the hearts of my devotees. The devotee does not know anything but me, and I also cannot forget the devotee. And I think I'm not sure, but I think the translation of that in the Bhagavatam verse itself is that Prabhupada gives there is they do not know anything beyond me, and I do not know anyone beyond anything beyond them. So here Prabhupada says it a little different. He says, I also cannot forget the devotee. So Krishna doesn't forget anyone, and he doesn't uh, let anyone go. Krishna is extremely kind and loving, and he's very determined. Like, some devotees in our ISKCON movement, there are many devotees who have determination that's like a rock, and they're like very strong, very extremely determined, and that comes from. There's nobody more determined than Krishna. When Krishna decides to do something, he's going to do it, and he's not going to stop doing it. And Krishna is very determined, and he's very persistent. His devotees are like, geez, I wish I could forget Krishna, but Krishna is so persistent. So, you didn't chant your rounds today. You better chant your rounds, and you didn't. You should. And devotees like and Krishna's like, you should come to the temple. And the devotee, drifting away devotee, is like, nah, I don't want to go to the temple. I'm not going to go to the temple. I'm going to go watch the cricket match or the football match. I'm not going to go to the temple. So they don't go to the temple. But it's not like Krishna is going to give up and after a couple tries and say, all right, well, he's not going to come, forget it. But the next day he'll say the same thing. You should come to the temple today, and he's talking to you in your heart. He wants you to come to the temple, and you might say, not going to come today either. Sorry, but he's not going to stop. He's just going to keep going and going and going. But I don't know all the details of the Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati coming in requesting initiation from Gorkishore Das Babaji. I don't know the whole story, but he had to show Gorkishore and Das Babaji that he was really determined. He tried to turn him away. He did turn him away more than once, I think. But Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, he didn't give up. he just kept going back and back, and then finally, Gorkishore Das Babaji accepted him as his disciple. And I think he only had two disciples or one disciple, two disciples. Yeah, he didn't have. He only had two disciples, but he accepted Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati because he saw he's not going to give up until I accept him. And so he surrendered. And Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, he surrendered too. And so that determination is, Krishna's determination is definitely exemplified in so many, in Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, and who was it, Raghunath Das Goswami. It said his austerities were like the lines in a rock. And lines in a rock, they don't move. Nothing, you can break the rock with a hammer or something, but for all practical purposes, the lines in a rock do not move. They're there for thousands or millions of years, and that's how Raghunath Das Goswami's vows and austerities were compared to. So Krishna, I'll tell you, the plain truth is that Krishna never forgets anyone. There's in the same section, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a verse. It's okay. It's all right. In the same section, because that's at the time where Jai and Vijay, they offended the four Kumaras and not letting them into Vaikuntha. It's okay. It doesn't matter. There's only a few of us here, and not far away. Jai and Vijay, they offended the four Kumaras, and Lord Vishnu, they went to Lord Vishnu, came out to see what was going on at the gateway, and he heard the whole story, and then he said, "All right, I know that my servants offended you, so they'll have to accept some punishment, but I just request you that they not be away from me very long." And he said, in that connection, he said, if I would offend my own devotee, I would cut off my own arm. Which is a pretty amazing statement by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Says I would cut off my own arm. And so Krishna, anyone have anything to contribute on that verse and purport?
I found that verse from chapter 22, verse 38. So these are two verses, 38 you can see.
38 and 39.
Yeah.
Krishna says, Lord Chaitanya is saying that Krishna says. Yeah. Krishna says, that means I say, Krishna says, if one engages in my transcendental loving service, but at the same time wants the opulence of material enjoyment, he is very, very foolish. Indeed, he is just like a person who gives up ambrosia to drink poison. Oh, next verse. He says, since I am very intelligent, why should I give this fool material prosperity? Instead, I shall induce him to take the nectar of the shelter of my lotus feet and make him forget illusory material enjoyment. So Krishna, he's a fool, but I'm very intelligent. And so I shall induce him to take the nectar of the shelter of my lotus feet and make him forget illusory material enjoyment. So we do the devote. That's another thing I've seen over the years in Krishna consciousness is that devotees and the American devotees, like me, that would come from the land of unrestricted sense gratification. The and so that's all anybody knows growing up is just get sense gratification, whatever you have, like Charvak Muni, it's like beg, borrow, or steal, but whatever you do, whatever you have to do, get ghee, because ghee is the greatest pleasure is eating, greatest sense gratification is eating, and the best way to eat is if you cook it with ghee. So he's just, it doesn't matter. And if somebody says, but what if there's some suffering that'll come from beg, borrowing, or stealing to get ghee? What if there's some punishment that comes? And he says something like, "Oh, don't worry about that. Forget about that." And so that's the essential bedrock philosophy of definitely the United States is that beg, borrow, or steal, but get sense gratification, and there's not even a question of whether there's going to be suffering involved with it. I mean, people know, everyone in the material world, everyone has some idea of karma. There's this saying in, not like we do, but people know that there's a saying in the United States that you might have heard is, what goes around comes around. And it's a fact. That's a recognition, like a very like sort of primitive recognition of the law of karma. They don't attribute it to God or any specific laws given by God, but they know that it's a fact. They, from hard experience in the material world, and from good experience, they know that people who treat treat other people decently, then they have a lot of friends and they live a more peaceful, happy life. And they see from in their own experience and from experience of everyone they know that if people are just criminals and exploiters and of every variety, then inevitably they suffer. So and there's other statements that are common in English that indicate a basic understanding of the of karmic reactions. But of course, and but they don't attribute it to God. They just say, well, that's life. You got to take the bad with the good. What are you going to do? And there's not. It's a very low, undeveloped, spiritually undeveloped consciousness. But there is some basic understanding of the laws of karma. I forget why I started talking about that.
Krishna doesn't give whatever we desire, and then karmic.
Yeah, and devotees know when they get when they have material desires and they get frustrated by their material desires. They know what's going on because they've heard it with no ifs, ands, or buts. They've heard it from Prabhupada. They've read it in the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam. They know what's going on, and people do learn over the course of time. Devotees do learn, and over the years, their material desires do decrease and do fall away. That's why sannyas is generally generally taken in advanced stage, because by that time, that period of their life, people have been through. They've been maybe brahmacharis, maybe not, but they've been grihastas and been involved in everything, job and work and everything, family, and they've gone through so much. It's not easy even in the best of circumstances, the material life is never easy. And by the time they're 50, 60, 70 years old, the devotee who took sannyas with Prabhupada wasn't he 99 years old? I think. I think he was at least 90 or 99. Anyway, that's a little old to take sannyas, but anyway, but sannyas is a natural progression. It's you should it, because you naturally feel more renounced. You naturally feel like, no, I don't need that sense gratification anymore. I don't need that. I had that, or I've been through all that, and it was very difficult. Caused me. I went through a lot of trouble and work and anxiety and suffering, and now I'm old. I'm not going to do that anymore. So anyway, sannyas is generally given in towards the end of life. And of course, when Prabhupada came to the United States, he gave Kirtananda Swami, he gave him sannyas, I think the first year in 1966. And then, and I think he was about 30 years old, 28 or 30 years old. So, and then Prabhupada gave sannyas to many other young men. Sometimes they left their wife and at a young age, and like Tamal Krishna Maharaj, that story is of him taking sannyas is there in the Lilamrita, and his wife didn't want him to take sannyas, and the women were all had like a committee, and they were fighting with the men. The men were other brahmacharis were in favor of him taking sannyas, and his wife and all the other women were objecting to it, and to Prabhupada, not just mumbling among themselves, but they went to Prabhupada and they objected to it. And Prabhupada was trying to be conciliatory for a while, but then he finally said he saw that Tamal Krishna Maharaj one day came down and with his clothes dyed and he had made a danda. He came down and Prabhupada's like, okay, this man's pretty serious, and he gave other devotees sannyas too. Mostly they weren't married, but there were quite a few cases where they were married only for a short time. What? I know that lady, the mother superior in Gitanagari. That's a Catholic term for a nunnery, mother superior, but she was like that in Gitanagari. And Mother Kalini, she took care of everyone. She took care of the deities. She took care of the cows. She took care of all the temple devotees. She took care of all the guests who came. Everybody loved her, and she was so nice with everybody. And and but she was married in 1968 to her and her husband came with a little baby, and their bhakta leader was Jayananda Prabhu, and said she was a great lady, and her husband took sannyas when the child was young, as Keshava Bharati Maharaj, and so he went away and left her, and she was all by herself. Not by herself. She was living in Gitanagari, being taken care of there, and she had her son who she raised at Gitanagari, and she was a great lady. And anyways, but in the beginning, Prabhupada was just trying to start something. He gave initiation in the beginning very quickly, sometimes even the first day when somebody came to him, he gave initiation. Not usually that fast, but within a couple of weeks or a couple of months. after a while, it became standard that if you were living in the temple, you were a good going to Mangalarti, chanting your rounds, doing all kinds of service. You get initiated after 6 months, and it was pretty standard. You had to be pretty bad not to get initiated after 6 months. Anyway, anyways, but Prabhupada was just trying to start something. He said, first thing I need initiated devotees, and then I need Brahmins. So he started giving Brahmin initiation in 1968. He held the first initiation in Boston, and the Matajis complained there too, and and they went to Prabhupada, and he said, okay, then the women can be Brahmins too, and why not? They're also great souls. They're also faithfully chanting and serving every day, like Mother Devahuti, serving tirelessly every day. So why shouldn't they take Brahmin initiation too? And he didn't initially do it. The first thing he did was just the men, but within like couple days later or something, he held a second Brahmin initiation for the women. And so first thing I want initiated devotees, and I want Brahmins, and I want sannyasis. Prabhupada considered it essential to have his sannyasis to show a standard of renunciation and travel and preach. And there were many difficulties, not with all the sannyasis, but with quite a few sannyasis. They had difficulty and couldn't maintain the sannyas ashram. And Prabhupada, I'm sure he expected that, and I'm sure he knew that would happen. But Prabhupada is just like, I got to do this now. I got to start this now, and for that I need disciples, I need Brahmins, I need sannyasis, and Krishna will take care of them. If they have trouble, then many devotees will have trouble. It's not easy surrendering to Krishna, coming out of nowhere and taking fully to Krishna consciousness and surrendering your whole life to Krishna is not easy. And Prabhupada knew, I guarantee you, he knew when he was initiating devotees and Brahmins and sannyasis that many of his disciples would have a lot of trouble, and many would fall down and leave, at least temporarily. And that's what happened. And Prabhupada knew that would happen. But the mission is so important that he had to take the risk to break all standard boundaries and just do whatever he had to do to establish the ISKCON movement securely and spread it all over the world. And it did spread. There were all kinds of problems, but there was so much great success. Also, the great success far outweighed the difficulties and the problems that came as a result of the non-standard things that Prabhupada did back then. And Krishna consciousness did spread all over the world. But if Prabhupada had said, it may have been too strict, then it would have, well, I can't say what would have happened, but I can imagine that Krishna consciousness wouldn't have spread so fast and so far, and the devotees were, even in the midst of the struggle, the devotees were faithful and determined and dedicated, surrendered servants of Prabhupada. Anyway, I got into that, but because it's an important part of ISKCON history, and and devotees should know it. The history of how Prabhupada started from nothing and spread. When I was in the UK just last week, I went to the Bhaktivedanta Manor, the country estate that George Harrison gave to Prabhupada very early in 1970, 71 or something. And he gave it, and now it's incredibly developed. It's a big, glorious project, and it's all kinds of programs and thousands of devotees coming every day, and many young English devotees living there, and many Indian devotees living there. And it's just a extremely successful project, big project for considering it's outside of India. In India, it might not be considered a huge project, but outside of India, it's big and it's fantastic. And and I was thinking, I was sitting there the first day I was there, seeing the crowds of people, and they have a parking lot there for like 200 cars, and it's so well developed, a big estate with Goshala, and everything there, and and I was just, it struck me how this huge, incredible thing is going on here. And these things are going on all over the world. And it all started with Prabhupada coming by himself with nothing except Krishna, with nothing to the United States. And one little, and Prabhupada would describe himself like that sometimes. He would talk to guests and say, well, how do I attract all these young American boys and girls? He'd say, I'm a poor sannyasi. I'm one little old Indian sannyasi. I'm not bribing them, and on the contrary, I'm making all these strict rules that they have to follow. No meeting, no intoxication, no illicit sex, no gambling, chant 16 rounds a day, use all your time and energy to work hard in Krishna's service. Not only am I not bribing them, I'm driving them like anything, and they're surrendering willingly, happily. So how am I doing this? It's only because I'm giving them Krishna's pure teachings, and they're surrendering to Krishna under my guidance, under my direction. Yeah. Yeah. And I always tell, like, at the Sunday feast, or when I give class in Boston, the Sunday lecture, and it's almost all Indian people there, and mostly college students, and like probably 70-80% college students. And I tell them, I tell them, when you came to India, when you came to the United States, you knew where you were going to stay. You had your iPhone with all your contacts. You had money. You knew exactly where you were going to go to school. You knew everything was planned up, and you were young. You're young and healthy, and but Prabhupada was 70 years old. He had heart attacks on the way over on the Jaladuta. He had no money. Only thing he had was his sets of three volumes of the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. That's like all he had. He had other things too, but basically all he had was his translation of Bhagavatam. He had one contact of a son of a friend in Vrindavan. He probably knew where Pennsylvania was on the map, but what's a Pennsylvania? Like I hear like Haryana or Tamil Nadu, and I know the names, but I'm like, I don't know. So Prabhupada, but he was, and the place he was going to in Pennsylvania, it wasn't like a city or a big town, or it was a little town on the far western side of Pennsylvania, right beside Ohio, is the next state. And he had, and his friend, his contact there, Gopal Agarwal, yeah, and his wife Sally, and they had two little children, and they didn't they didn't know what to expect. He was dutiful to his father in Vrindavan, so he agreed to take them in, and but they didn't let him stay in their house. They had him stay in the YMCA building, Young Men's Christian Association, where they had rooms for, you just have a room for pretty cheap, like couple dollars a night at that time. And so they didn't want to, but he went to their house every day and he gave classes at night to their friends. But Prabhupada, it's like the young Indian students, and it's like it can try. I try to get them to think of what it must have been like for Prabhupada to do that. Like, I don't know if they think very much about it, or even if they can really picture it or understand it like we can. And even we don't understand it that well, but we have a pretty good understanding of what Prabhupada went through. And then, and then of course Prabhupada went to New York and he stayed at Dr. Mishra's impersonal ashram. And Dr. Mishra really liked him, but he wouldn't let him preach. At least at Gopal, the Agarwal's house in Pennsylvania, they let him preach, and yeah, and
Vishwas.
what?
Yeah, that Vishwa didn't allow it.
Yeah, it's like, 'cause I can't let them talk. They'll leave me and they'll surrender to him. And probably some of them would have. They all liked him, and they all liked the kirtan. And anyway, I've been talking a long time. Anyone have any? I wasn't going to do that, but I sort of got in rolling, and I have a tendency to do that. Just get into it and have a hard time stopping. But
That's very nice. We can hear more also. I'd like to see this proper, the same word.
Oh yeah.
It's very nice.
Yeah. Those who are interested in material enjoyment are known as bhukti kami. One who is interested in merging into the effulgence of Brahman or perfecting the mystic yoga system is not a devotee at all. Devotees do not have such desires. I heard Prabhupada talking recently in one lecture, and he referred to the impersonalists as atheists. And you might say, what do you, in some places, Prabhupada says, yes, they're impersonalists or transcendentalists too. And he kind of glorifies them a little. But other times he says things like that, like he calls them atheists. And basically everyone every fallen soul is essentially an atheist, because atheist means without God or even against God. And all of us come to the material world not necessarily against Krishna, but not wanting to be with Krishna, not wanting to serve Krishna. So every fallen soul is, in essence, an atheist, and even up to the point of those who desire impersonal liberation, and they do big austerities, and the really serious ones, they're very scholarly, and they do big austerities, but Prabhupada referred to them as atheists. Let's see. However, if a karmi, jnani, or yogi somehow contacts a devotee and renders devotional service,
How yogi karma.
yeah, somehow contacts a devotee and renders devotional service, Krishna immediately awards him love of God and gives him shelter at his lotus feet. You might say, well, I won't get it. Yeah, you might say, well, I didn't immediately get pure love of Krishna. Of course, I started rendering, maybe I haven't started rendering devotional service yet. But another way to look at it is the green mango and the ripe mango. The green mango, it's a mango, and it doesn't taste good when it's green, but as soon as it's ripe, it'll be delicious. So we are green mangoes. We're mangoes, and we're getting riper and riper every second.
You are ripened, we agree.
What?
You are ripened mango, we agree.
I'm pretty green. Anyways, so in that sense, we have the seed, definitely the seeds of pure love of Krishna in our heart, and that the seed of love of Krishna will develop and grow. There's the whole analogy of the creeper of bhakti in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So we're all like little seedling creepers or green mangoes. Let's see. If a person wants material profit from devotional service, Krishna condemns such materialistic desires. To desire material opulence while engaging in devotional service is foolish. Although the person may be foolish, Krishna, being all intelligent, engages him in his devotional service in such a way that he gradually forgets material opulence. And we do. We do gradually forget material opulence. It becomes like, the point is that we should not try to exchange loving service for material prosperity. If we are actually surrendered to the lotus feet of Krishna, our only desire should be to satisfy Krishna. That is pure Krishna consciousness. Surrender means not that we demand something from the Lord, but that we completely depend on his mercy. If Krishna likes, he may keep his devotee in a poverty-stricken condition. Or if he likes, he may keep him in an opulent position. The devotee should not be concerned in either case. He should simply be very serious about trying to satisfy the Lord by rendering him service. Okay. Well, unless somebody has anything to say, I'm just gonna.
Prabhuji, you were mentioning about his knowledge of ISKCON history. So I just wanted to ask
Yeah.
like when Prabhupada disappeared, then like how you and the devotee that first time, like the ISKCON went through various challenges during 80s and early 90s. So how did you cope up? And,
Well, we were pretty committed, and we were pretty staunch devotees, and yeah, and yeah, I remember the morning we heard about Prabhupada leaving. The temple president called us together and told us. And then, of course, afterwards, for the first few years in the global zonal acharya system, it went pretty well. And it went pretty well. But, and people just, pretty much almost all the devotees, or the very high percentage of the devotees, just accepted that, okay, there's 11 spiritual masters. That's what Prabhupada said. And so that's what we're going to do. And that's what we did. And devotees had faith in that. It's what Prabhupada wanted. So that's what we do. And then, of course, there were abuses that came out of it. Some zonal acharyas started just demanding too much worship for themselves, uh, and even from not only from their disciples, but from all the devotees in their zone, especially if they were both the GBC and the zonal acharya, and they became very aggressive like that. And you have to surrender to me. I'm Prabhupada's representative, and they're God brothers too. And then, of course, over the time, more and more Prabhupada disciples started thinking, hey, this isn't right. I know he's a spiritual master and he has his own disciples. That doesn't mean that we're his disciples. But it was almost like that, and some of the acharyas, they more or less expected that, and so it led to a lot of dissatisfaction. And then, of course, several of them, they had great difficulty and they fell down and left Krishna consciousness or created so much trouble. So, yeah, of course, there's a big disturbance in ISKCON, all over ISKCON, especially for the disciples of the gurus who had the trouble and left, especially for them. But many of them, they stayed in ISKCON and they stayed surrendered to Prabhupada, and many of them took initiation from someone else, and ISKCON went on very strongly. Is not that, I mean, it was a disturbance, but and of course in Boston, I didn't experience much of the disturbance because I didn't travel anywhere, and I wasn't experiencing what devotees did in other areas of the world. But I know that even in those areas, the preaching, of course, went down and suffered for a good period of time. But ISKCON didn't stop there. Krishna consciousness went on very strongly and powerfully all over the world, and this many years later, we don't even think about that time very much, and many devotees might not even know the history at all or hardly at all, but we see that everywhere in the world, Krishna consciousness is going on really, really strong, and it's like that because it's directly a manifestation of Lord Chaitanya's desire. Lord Chaitanya is directly manifesting his personal energy, himself. Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya are directly manifesting themselves as the ISKCON movement. So nothing can stop it. Nothing can stop Lord Chaitanya's desire. And there were difficult times. There are difficult times now. There are many struggles in ISKCON now, and there will be as time goes on. There will continue to be struggles, but that's why. But if we just stay simple, faithful, humble servants, and we can go on and on and on and on, and never be drawn away by any misconceptions or any alternative preaching or anything like that.
That simple, faithful, loyal, humble servants.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, devotees, and I was there. I'm not a good devotee, but I knew I was pretty faithful and hardworking and dedicated, and I knew so many devotees, hundreds, thousands, well, maybe not thousands, I didn't know at that time, but I definitely knew hundreds of devotees. Hundreds of devotees had gone through the Boston Temple, not all at the same time, but in twos or threes or fours or one at a time. And hundreds of devotees had gone through the temple. I knew them, and they were good, strong devotees, like really knowledgeable and surrendered and dedicated and hardworking. Any good thing you can say about them is true. So when the problems came, devotees knew it was a problem, but we didn't feel like, oh, that's a problem. Now that's really bad. There must be something essentially wrong. We didn't think like that. We thought, okay, there's problems, so but we have to go on, and we will go on, and we did go on, and everything worked out, and everything will always work out as long as we just stay faithful and true to Prabhupada and his mission. The essence of any personal relationship is loyalty, is faith and trust. When people get married, they have to believe in each other. They have to have faith in each other. They have to trust each other. They have to be loyal to each other. And that's any personal relationship. And it's true to the ultimate extent in relationship with your spiritual master, in relationship with all your fellow devotees, in relationship with Prabhupada and Krishna. Just stay faithful, just stay true and loyal. Loyalty is the most essential quality for a devotee. Yeah. Okay, better.
Uh, Sometimes some devotee, when they get too frustrated by any bad experience in ISKCON,
Yeah,
they leave ISKCON and
yeah,
they keep following, and then they propose this theory that ISKCON doesn't mean like
yeah,
ISKCON is a principle. So even if we are not in ISKCON, we are still in ISKCON. So
yeah,
how to safeguard from that sort of mindset? Because being in ISKCON is
yeah.
being within ISKCON.
Yeah, and of course, many of them are still faithful to Prabhupada, but Prabhupada wanted us to keep his movement together. He said his famous statement is, "Your love for me will be demonstrated by how you cooperate together to maintain what I've started after I have gone." And that's what Prabhupada wanted. He wanted a mission, a movement to stay strong and healthy, and because you need a mission, a movement to preach in a unified way, and because we're supposed to take over the whole world, and you can't do that one at a time or individual people. You have to work together. You have to work together, even for the smallest task. If you doing it by yourself, it might take an hour to do it, and you might get discouraged and say, "Forget it, I'm not going to do it." But if somebody comes to help you, or one or two people come to help you, then all of a sudden it's really easy, and you get you get it done in like 15 minutes or 10 minutes. And you were like, I had that with taking out the trash a few weeks ago in the Boston Temple, and there was piles and piles of trash and cardboard boxes. They had to be flattened out and taken to the dumpster that we had. And I like doing it. I've been doing it all my life. And I'll tell you a funny story. It's funny to me, but I used to always do that, and the dumpster would get full, but there was a lot of it was just air. It just looked full, and so I get up on top of it and jump on it to pack it down, and there'd be a lot more room. And so a couple times Naranjana Brahmachari and then Naranjana Swami, he'd come up in his car and he'd see me jumping on the dumpster, and he really liked it. He thought it was pretty cool. And yeah, and I used to clean the kitchen every night. Not always by myself, but a lot of times by myself. Wash all the pots and sweep and mop the floor and clean off all the counters and take out all the trash. And our cooks back then were really messy cooks. They'd spill like a puddle of ghee on the floor, and then they'd spill like a cup of flour in the ghee, and not wipe it up or anything, or use a pot for 2 seconds and just to do, and then just throw it in the sink, and they never clean like anything at that time, and it's like that kind of today too in Boston Temple again. And anyways, I like cleaning the kitchen, and I get into it, and every night I'd be in there. I'd start at like 7 or 8 o'clock at night, and then clean till like 9 or 9:30, or sometimes 10 o'clock, and sometimes we had this really charismatic GBC, a sannyasi. His name was Adi Keshava, and he was really like just super charismatic and really nice. Everybody, not everybody liked him, but mostly everybody liked him a lot. I definitely did, and he took sannyas after like 3 or 4 years, 5 years, and he was really good in a lot of ways. And anyway, he would go out at night when he was visiting our temple with Naranjana Brahmachari. At the time, they would go out at night to do home programs, take the car and go visit somebody and do home programs. And then I'd be in the kitchen cleaning the kitchen, and I'd stay in there purposely. I'd basically finish cleaning the kitchen, but I'd stay in there purposely till they came back, so that they'd see me. Oh, there's Mukta. He's here working hard late at night. He's really good. I was pretty good anyway, but I wasn't that good. But I wanted him to see me. It's not wrong to want to be noticed by your spiritual master. It's not wrong to want to be noticed by your temple authorities or your GBC. It's like, you don't want to get into it too much. Like, hey, look at me, look what I'm doing. But it's okay. It's a natural human feeling to want to be noticed and appreciated, and yeah. Anyway, that's a funny story, but.
The dumpster is too high. How you used to go in?
Well, at that time, when I was young, I could just hold on to it and just jump up into it. I stopped doing it about a year ago because I was too dangerous. If I fell out, it would be really bad. But then I wasn't jumping up into it. I was using a chair to get up into it, and then step on the chair to get out of it. But when I was young, I could just hold on to it and jump up. Like the boys here, they can just jump up and down onto the thing. Anyways, I was taking out all this. There was a big pile of trash, and I knew I had to do it. I knew nobody else was going to do it. I was pretty confident of that because it had already been there for 2 or 3 days, but I like doing the trash, so I was out there doing it, and but I was like, oh man, there's really a lot of trash here. I don't know. And but then one boy, a guest, came down, an Indian boy, and he came down and he said, "Okay, can I help you?" And I was like, "Hare Krishna, glories to Gaura." And I was like, a lot of times the young boys will come and they'll say, "Can I help you?" And they'll give it sort of a half-hearted effort, but they don't really get into it. Their heart's in the right place, but they don't really get into the service sometimes. And I was like, "Oh yeah, you can help me. Okay, let's see what you can do." I didn't say that to him, but I was thinking that. I was like, "All right, help me. We'll see what you can do." And but he was really good, and he really worked hard, and he really helped a lot. And what would have taken me an hour to do, and might have quit halfway through because out of frustration, or with him, it took like 10 or 15 minutes to do. And then so anyway, so the original point is that was Prabhupada's main uh, desire, is that everyone should know and love God, and everyone includes a lot of people, and not only the human beings, but all the living entities in the whole world should become Krishna conscious. And in order to do that, you need a movement. You need an army of devotees working cooperatively together. So devotees can go off by themselves and chant their rounds if they get too frustrated, and but but it's much better. And I know devotees like that, and they're really good devotees, and they stay faithful to Prabhupada, and but if, of course, if everyone did that, then we couldn't build the temple in Newtown or Mayapur or New Jersey. They're building a big temple in New Jersey and all in many places in the United States. We couldn't do it unless we have an army of devotees working together. Yeah.
So that's like Radhashyam Prabhu had this theme: together, everyone achieves more.
Yeah. And it's such everyone knows it. Everyone knows that if you work cooperatively together, you can accomplish things that impossible or very difficult for one person to do. But if you have a team, then you can do it. You're still going to have to work hard, but you can do it. You can accomplish great things. Anyways, I better stop and go down, get ready, and get some rest. I got to leave pretty early tomorrow and get up to Mayapur. But I will say that it's been a pleasure being here with all of you. You're all great souls. It says it right here in the purport.
It's our great fortune.
It's my great fortune.
It's our greatest fortune.
It's my greater fortune. All right. Ki jai. ISKCON ki jai.
Wonderful.